Well, thank you all, and thank you all very much for your wonderful talks this morning. It was absolutely, they were just brilliant talks, and I always enjoy hearing you all speak, so thank you all very much for that. For the purposes of this panel discussion, we might be covering a couple of the key concepts that were already covered during the talks, but because this will be a discrete video that will be available, we might go over a couple things as well. First of all, we just wanted to cover and establish what the metabolic theory of cancer is, if you wanted to give a brief discussion on that, and what the evidence is that this is more of a mitochondrial issue than a genetic issue.
I think the data speak for themselves. As Matt said, it's a mitocentric problem. And I think because we weren't able to see mitochondria for so many years until the electron microscope, a lot of what we knew about mitochondria came from biochemistry. Warburg never saw a mitochondria. He called them grana. They were some thing in the cytoplasm that made energy. But he didn't look at it. All of his concepts were based on biochemistry. But only after you started looking at these things in a greater way. And I agree with Matt. The future is mitochondria-centric because it underlies all the chronic diseases, all major cancers, because that organelle has been corrupted by our new diet and lifestyles, putting us at risk. So we can still fumble and bumble around with the, gene-centric kind of thing, or we can, begin to realize that this is a new way of looking at disease. And I think you're going to see the outcomes change dramatically. And I think what we all agree on the same page. There's no discrepancies here.
Yeah. So we discussed in your talks some of the treatment aspects for someone who has active cancer. But will these same principles also apply to prevention?
It's hard to get cancer with your mitochondria healthy. It's very hard. And people say, oh, look at all the people with cancer. You have to really abuse the hell out of your body to get cancer. People say, well, I didn't really do that much. Well, from what we heard, we're just living in a provocative environment. When you take animals that don't have cancer and try to give them cancer, it's very hard. So whatever we're doing in our environment, the great diet and lifestyle, we're abusing our bodies. And more cancer are coming to younger and younger people. We got obesity epidemics, diabetes epidemics, all these epidemics. Or all impacting for decades. It doesn't like one day you're healthy and the next day you wake up with a tumor. These are chronic problems manifesting themselves in very different ways. So yes, if you keep your mitochondria healthy, if you have a GKI low, if we did what Isabella says, we would probably be like the Paleolithic guys, right? I said we put on animal skins and we have a good time, right?
Yeah, one of the concepts that's really important, which I didn't talk about because it was for people with cancer, but for prevention, this concept of hormesis is crucial. And hormesis means you apply a stress to the cells of your body or whatever intermittently and then give them a nice recovery. And if you do that, things get stronger over time. Now, taking that further, mitohormesis means adopting this concept in a mitocentric manner. So things like you do a nice exercise program. For example, when you exercise, it's actually stress that damages mitochondria, and they recover and get stronger in the interim. I think if you do that, you'll keep your mitochondria healthy long term. And if you've got that mito shift where the mitochondria are healthy and doing most of the metabolism and controlling the cell functions, and you got some nice mito recovery going on, and and they're getting enhanced. I think it would be very difficult to get the vast majority of cancers. I won't say all because I'm not a purist, but I think most of them, it would be very hard to get them. Yeah.
And I think to your point, to the points that Isabella made in her talk. One of the roles, one of the key roles of insulin, well, they have hundreds of different mechanisms in your body, but it also suppresses autophagy and mitophagy, importantly. And so if we're getting damage to our mitochondria, and we're suppressing their regeneration and the generation of new mitochondria, then obviously that's going to build up a toll on your mitochondrial health over time. And so if you're maintaining a ketogenic diet, you're maintaining a low insulin level, then you're actually going to be triggering autophagy and mitophagy. And some studies have shown that after several months, you'll have multiple times more mitochondria in your cells, and they're much more effective because they've been turned over and recycled as well. So even from a preventative mechanism, just from that standpoint, keeping your insulin low, that might be protective as well.
So in my PhD studies, which was looking at aging and longevity, the hormones, the two biomarkers, was insulin and IGF-1 that had the strongest influence on lifespan with health span. And that was across species, all of life studies. And so there goes, if it's lifespan with health span, the odds are cancer will go down, the risk for it.
So Professor Seyfried touched on this a couple points as well, but what would be some of the mainstream sort of challenges to this theory of the metabolic theory of cancer?
Lack of knowledge.
Good. All right. So obviously, this is called ketogenic metabolic therapy. So the main focus is being in ketosis. Matthew, you work with people doing a carnivore to vegetarian sort of approaches. I've certainly seen that in the literature, certain case series, specifically in GBM, actually out of Arizona. They did a ketogenic approach in a case series with 16 patients and had significant shrinkage of the tumors and things like that. And they actually used a plant-based ketogenic approach as well, which was interesting. So is it simply the ketogenic side of this, or are there other sort of dietary modifications that are important in this as well?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, evolutionarily, if we go pre-cultural, it should be meat-based, right? So more carnivore near the poles, and as you get further south, there's more plant-based. This is pre-cultural, when plants didn't look like anything like they do today, right? So in terms of cancer treatment, though, yeah, if you maintain the ketogenic state and you're doing the mito shift and the mito recovery and all that stuff, and if you're making sure you work that vegetarian diet correctly so you don't get nutrient deficiencies. So when I get a vegetarian or vegan patient, I always check a few key things, as you probably do, the zinc, the vitamin D, and calcium, and so on. So I see no reason why it wouldn't work as effectively. Another thing people say about the carnivore diet that they worry about is it going to dump a whole bunch of glutamine in my system, which is other than glucose, right? You can have substrate level phosphorylation through glycolysis, but you can also have it, as Professor Seyfried showed, through glutaminolysis. And a lot of people worry about this theoretical concern, and me too, to a level, if I have my tomahawk, and is the GBM going to crank up its glutamine usage? Well, I can tell you theory is important, but when you do clinical trials and you're in the trenches with the patients, it's your knowledge, it's a way different kind of learning, right? So it hasn't been an issue. So I think a lot of the theoretical issues against maybe vegetarian keto or carnivore keto, when you actually do this stuff, the body probably is a lot of ways to compensate, and it's more complicated than one could imagine on many levels. So anyways, yeah, I think the ketosis state, to answer your question, is the key thing, yeah, and all the other mechanisms that come with that.
So I'm in slight disagreement on that, and I think that it should be shifted more to meat-based, animal-based, rather than plant-based, and I think that there are reasons for that. And the degree of the shift, you could argue, is different for different types of cancers and comorbidities as well. So it is easier to be in a higher state of ketosis on a carnivore diet. That's one thing that we actually notice amongst participants and patients that we work with. So it's easier. You're already undergoing a very stressful situation. You want the easiest solution. That's number one. It's also very nutrient sufficient, so you don't even need to worry about deficiencies. They will get corrected more than likely on a carnivore diet. It's highly bioavailable. Plants, they have been used traditionally as medicine and do sometimes work as medicines. They act as cleansers for the body, so they bind to things and take them out through the intestines. They will lower your cholesterol. By the way of lowering your cholesterol, the fiber of the plants, as well as many seed oils, is by extracting out the bile from your body. What is bile for? To absorb vitamin A, D, K, E, omega-3, omega-6, and essentially taurine, which is essential for your mitochondrial function. It's essential for the tRNA transcription, for the oxidative phosphorylation machinery, as an antioxidant as well to your mitochondria. It can only be absorbed with bile. So you do not want to be eating a diet that extracts your bile, that inhibits its reabsorption. So that attention to detail does matter. Fiber can keep your stomach pH between 3.5 to 5.5. That's going to keep your lower esophageal sphincter more open. You're going to have more gases, acid, coming up. That's going to activate your sympathetic nervous system. That's going to increase blood glucose as a stress adrenaline response. So these things have to be thought about, especially with patients who have any kind of acid reflux, who have any laryngeal, pharyngeal, cough reflex, things like that. So then you've got patients who have rheumatoid arthritis sensitivities. So they're going to have to be more particular with foods that are going to activate their immune system in a dysregulated way. And with seed oils, you know, quite a lot of them are phytoestrogen rich. Do you want to do that when you've got a hormone-sensitive cancer? So, you know, plant-based, I'm a little more negative on that, for cancer patients especially.
So, yeah. So this is something you mentioned as well in your talk, but is there an ideal way of achieving a low GKI, or can you manipulate this with ketone esters or MCT oils? I know that Professor Seyfried had a competition in his lab. They all went on a ketogenic carnivore diet, see who can get their GKI down lower. And the guy who won turned out to be cheating because he was taking MCT oils. So is that legal when you're trying to treat cancer? Is it that combination of having higher ketones and lower glucose by any hook or crook? Or is it that you're really trying to limit and suppress the glucose to have it not available to the cancer cells, and by virtue of being in that state, you're having higher ketones which support your native cells?
Yeah, I think all of what you said is part of the whole thing. The competition, who can get the lowest GKI, athletes cheat by taking steroids or some sort of hormone, right? So when you're in competition to see who can get the lowest GKI, you cheat by taking MCT oil, right? Then you'll win the competition. The higher the ketones also reduce the absorption of glucose that you're going to do. So yes, and the idea is how low can you get your GKI? But not to the point where you're going to be so super obsessive about it. Fasting is clear. Exercise, massively helpful. If you're doing water fasting and exercise, that'll bring your GKI down. Again, you're exercising your mitochondria as well as the rest of your body. But all of what you said, Anthony, all of this plays a role. But yes, that's why we said, like Dom D'Agostino loves to take ketone supplements. I mean, he'll always, you want to have a race with Dom will always win. Okay, he eats squirrels as well, and he exercises. So there's a lot of ways to get there. But he's always very healthy. I don't ever see Dom out of energy. So, but what you said, I think you put it all together and you can, but not, how low can you can't get it too low because you're really going to harm your erythrocytes. Something we were talking about, how little just tiny amount of glucose that you need for your erythrocytes. They don't need much. But you can't go zero glucose on this ever, I don't think.
So again, I mentioned that earlier in my talk, which was that exogenous ketones, they will have some benefit at a time point in your treatment. But it's at the beginning, you really want to know what helps you get into therapeutic ketosis without the exogenous ketones. You want to know what are the key foods that work for you. You want to figure out what are the 10 things that you call going back to basics. So that if you're doing treatment, you have a stressful event in your life, any of these sort of things, you know what to go back to as the basics that work for you. So you do that without exogenous ketones. Because also, what does it mean? It means that you've got your insulin low, which means all those growth factors have gone down too, which are all impacting the mitochondria, is stimulating the growth and proliferation and inhibiting the apoptosis. So it's really important to not go straight to the exogenous ketones. And then once you know what are your baseline core things that work for you, then you can experiment around with the exogenous ketones.
The important issue when we say endogenous ketones versus ketone supplements, we have to be careful because some of them are racemic mixtures. They have D and L ketone in there. It's the L ketone, right? That's the natural. So when you take MCT oil, that oil goes, your liver will make the natural ketone from the MCT oil, as opposed to taking exogenous ketones. So we have to recognize that. So you want to make ketones from your liver. The liver is the predominant organ that makes natural ketones. If you put in racemic mixtures, you don't get the full power. There's a delta G prime ATP hydrolysis that ketones are what we call super fuel for the body. They have more carbon-hydrogen bonds than pyruvate, and they do not uncouple the mitochondria like fatty acids. And therefore, that's why the late George Cahill and Bud Veach, friends of mine, always were talking about the bioenergetic power of the ketone. And you want it natural. And that's ultimately the goal. And that's what our ancestors, they were always in natural ketosis.
Yeah. So that brings another question to mind where, we do see this pattern where people get this idea of being keto adapted, fat adapted, where after several months, 6 months or longer, their ketone levels naturally go down. This is typically thought to be because they're being more adapted, they're utilizing these ketones more properly, they're not expelling them in the urine as readily as they were in the first 6 months or so. So does that change the equation for the GKI? Because if you're eating the exact same amount at day one and eating in the exact same patterns and descriptions, and then 6 months, 8 months, a year down the track, you're just not able to maintain a higher ketone level due to this adaptation phenomenon. Does that change how we're trying to calculate the GKI, or does that come into it?
I think that's a great question. Andrew Scarborough has been doing where's Andrew? Is he here? Oh, Andrew. Okay, so Andrew knows pretty much his GKI without having to measure it because he's been in these zones. And it does rise over time, but the efficiency of the balance of the metabolism has become so much more superior to the way it was. And the body makes these adjustments. At the beginning, I think we have to be very, like what Matt was saying, you have to be rigid on this, with flexibility, of course, but your body will slowly adapt to this whole new environment. We don't call it new, it's like return to who we were. But you, yeah, people can do well, but it does change. So I don't think we have to be killing ourselves, well, when you've done it as long as Andrew. I mean, others, but there's some, your group, yes. Right? You're right, David.
The longest is 20 years more.
20 years. You should, measuring your GKI for 20 years would be really impressive, wouldn't it?
And, I mean, two of them already had children, and two had already had children before the trial, and then two who planned to have children had them immediately after the trial. So, that's a sign as well as healthy function of the body, being able to conceive children easily. The sign that they've been sustaining it for a long time, and it obviously wasn't messing up their natural physiology.
So, and we talked about glutamine as well. Not really, I mean, glutamine is abundant in plant and animal-based food sources. We make it ourselves. So what is the significance of taking sort of pharmaceutical suppression of glutamine? How important of a role is that in this ketogenic metabolic therapy?
That, to me, is the key. we can certainly manage cancer effectively doing keto by itself, but we're interested in seeing how far we can push the body to get rid of it. The problem with targeting glutamine, and that's why we had the press pulse, was when you kill cancer cells in the tissue, we have another army of cells come in and pick up the dead cells, the corpses, which are the macrophages, and they clean up the microenvironment. But they need glutamine, just like the tumor cells. So glutamine is essential for our gut, essential for the immune cells, and essential for urea cycles and a variety of other glutamine-dependent activities. So when we try, so we're at this is why this strategy has to be our approach has to be strategic, because we don't want to be too aggressive in targeting glutamine because we'll paralyze our immune system and damage our gut. So we have to be cognizant of that, and that's where dosage timing and scheduling for what Matt's doing, I don't think you have to, in your cancer patients for sure you have to measure it, but that's our challenge to know that. How far can we push the glutamine targeting without harming the body? Dawn is the best drug that we have found to do that, and it's not available. Why? I have no clue. Can't make any money on it. That's the real reason. It's off patent. They can't make, you can't, they're making Dawn out of Johns Hopkins. They changed the molecule a little bit, but they haven't let it out. They like to try these drugs by themselves. You have to do it as a package deal. So the issue here is we have a drug. It's exceptionally powerful, but it also has capabilities to harm part of the body. So strategies would be dosing it in certain ways to reduce its toxicity but maintains its therapeutic efficacy, or find a way to keep that drug powerful but neutralize its toxic thing part. And that's where we are right now. So, but I think if we had access to Dawn, why don't we have access to Dawn? I mean, we used it on little kids. We used it on a lot of cancer patients. They said it didn't work, and it had little toxicity, nothing like Red Devil, doxorubicin. But they dropped it because it wasn't done. If you have a tool, you need to know how to use the tool. You don't take a hammer to saw wood. You know what I'm saying? So they were using a tool in the wrong way. Now we know how to use it, and we have an idea how to make it better, but we don't have the drug available to us, and that should not be.
Are there other agents that clinicians could use instead of Dawn if to get some similar sort of effect?
Yeah, we have CPI 613, which failed in clinical trials for pancreatic cancer. When we put it on the mice, it failed miserably as well. But when we administered it with fasting and ketogenic diet, powerful. So again, once you put the patient in this state of nutritional ketosis, it opens up a whole array, a new array of drugs that may have been thrown out, not worked. That's called the whole field of repurposing drugs now. But once the body is in this new physiological state, things that were thought to be ineffective become super effective. So again, that's a whole new field that will open as the result once this information gets out more.
And you mentioned mebendazole in your talk as well. Does that have a glutamine blocking aspect to it as well?
Yes, that's in our paper also. That's another interesting thing. Parasite medications. I don't know about ivermectin because there was a lot of political stuff about that. So I said to the lab, we're not going to do that because we didn't want to get the wrath from somebody. But mebendazole, fenbendazole, I said, why people are taking that, and you hear people say, well, I got rid of my cancer with this and that. So I did a dive on it, and I said, why parasite medications work against cancer cells? And it turns out that the parasites use mitochondrial substrate level phosphorylation in the tissue. And these mebendazole, fenbendazole kill these parasites. So I tried it on the cancer cell, and sure as hell, it targets mitochondrial substrate and glycolysis. So we have a mechanism now why parasite medications are working. But cancer is not a parasite. All these people say, oh, cancer is a parasite. It's not a parasite. Parasites and tumors use a common metabolic pathway, and a drug that works against parasites can be very effective against cancer. And that's what we begin to see, especially under nutritional ketosis. Yeah. Right? Can you imagine this?
Yeah, that, oh, sorry, go on.
So ivermectin, it actually works on the mitochondrial cell death pathway, the BCL2 BAX-BAD pathway. So it actually helps push the cell death pathway. So there's some quite good literature in that, actually. And then with regards to Don, and as you said, you know, toxicity and why is it different, glutamine inhibition, why is it different whilst you're in ketosis? This is something really important because, of course, once you get a cancer diagnosis and you come across the work that's been done here, a lot of people want to do everything all at the same time. And it's important not to do that. You need to get into therapeutic ketosis, and it needs to be sustained for a period of time. It's really important so that all the programming of your muscles, your lean muscle mass, goes into protein preservation mode. And once you get that, then, you know, you do some fasting along with some glutamine inhibition. And then, first of all, with regards to the intestines, you know, you don't want to be eating whilst you're taking a drug that's going to negatively affect your intestines either. So it is a caution to people not to want to do it all at the same time. It has to be strategically planned out.
And then, I know the answer to this question, but just to get it on the record, you know, and illustrate what Dr. Phillips has been doing, this isn't something that is either or, is it? It's not something you have to do instead of standard of care. This is something you can do with and could potentially provide synergistic benefits. Is that correct?
Yeah, we all agree, I think, on that.
Yeah, just like that transcending duality, which is why, you know, I'm okay with working with vegetarian or carnivore or omnivore. I realize most people have carnivore bends in the room, so, but I am okay with that. I don't think we should polarize. Theoretical reasons are not as important as clinical reality. So I have a lot of misconceptions when I was learning about this stuff for the last few years. I thought, ooh, what about that? What about that? What's fasting going to do to the microbiota? This all falls flat when you work with patients. And you know, I respect GBM. It's unpredictable, it's capricious, and I respect my patients who embark on these things. So yeah, I think you don't have to restrict yourself to one way of thinking on many levels, and that's super important not to. Don't entrench.
You know, we mentioned our friend Andrew Scarborough, previously a very long-term survivor of GBM, and doing very well, which is great. So that's good for Andrew. Give it up for Andrew. When he spoke here 2 years ago, when this meeting was up in Sheffield, he mentioned how dietitians and nutritionists weren't really understanding of ketogenic metabolic therapy. They didn't really understand that could be dangerous, stress the system. I know that the BBC got very upset at Dr. Seyfried's appearance on the Diary of a CEO, saying that if you go into a ketogenic diet, this could be harmful, this could be damaging to your health and things like that. Has there been any ground gained with nutritionists and dietitians, and how do we sort of make inroads with them to try and help facilitate these changes in cancer?
I can speak from a clinical reality perspective. So on this GBM trial, there is no dietitian. There's no dietitian in the country of New Zealand who's qualified to do the fasting protocol, and what we're doing is essentially a heavy-duty fasting protocol. It's very few that are qualified to administer a ketogenic diet, let alone a carnivore diet or a vegetarian diet, you know, the omnivore. But even then, yeah, they're so far removed as a practice from as a field from the real world implementation of these things. Where do you start? I mean, I find the dietitians are the most, and the high-level specialists are the most challenging two groups to change. So I think you just have to do it yourself. And you know, there's a few dietitians in the States and probably the UK that are probably able to do this, but Little New Zealand, no. So, yeah, I think when you don't have the people around you that you need to help you, you just have to do it yourself and skill up yourself and go for it. Yeah, that's my take.
Yeah, that is a challenge. But we're learning. Many of these dietitians are starting to learn, and they want to become involved in this, and they start learning how to power food to help this and get this. Alicia Halakis out of Minneapolis, Minnesota, has a clinic, and she studied in her. She's a physician's assistant actually, but she's got as much dietary experience in doing all this kind of stuff as well. Yeah, it just takes time for people to learn how to do this. If you have a license, they have to reevaluate what it means to be in ketosis. They have to be balanced in micro and macronutrients. Do it the way Isabella says. Learn from those experiences, and then apply that and start doing this. I don't know what's going on. You go to the hospital and the cancer center, and they're drinking Coca-Cola, sweet tea, and donuts. And I saw the guy with being infused with Red Devil doxorubicin with a stand with the bag. And he's got a liter of Coca-Cola and a hamburger. And I'm saying to myself, what the hell is this? In the leading cancer center of our country, Dana-Farber Cancer Center, right? But then I found out it happens at MD Anderson, Sloan Kettering, go right down the list. I mean, this is nuts, right? And where's the dietitian there? She should be ripping the soda out of his hand, right? Mm-hmm. Rather than tell me, here's another one.
On top of it, actually, I mean, it's not anecdotal. I've seen this too many times, and it drives me nuts. Following on from what you're saying, so patients who really they contact us, really desperate because they've been sent to hospice at this point, which means they've been sent to die, and they're told there's nothing we can do for you. They've often been completely destroyed by the standard of care at this point, and they're told, go home, well, go to the hospice and spend as much time with your family. And then, the family, they're struggling to eat, struggling to get any nutrition. So, well, why not try, total parental nutrition, a ketogenic version? They're not ideal, they're not perfect. There's a lot of bad ingredients in them, but at least. And when we spoke to dietitians at Great Ormond and the doctors who do prescribe this for childhood epilepsy, their answer is, oh no, it's too dangerous. I mean, seriously, it is absolutely shocking. What about the quality of life, even in your end of life? Every day matters, and every day is worth fighting for. I mean.
Yeah, I don't know how many patients have come to me after speaking with their oncologist, and they say, is there anything I can do? Should I stop drinking? Should I change my diet, this, that, and the other? And they say, no, don't worry about it. Eat and drink whatever you want. It doesn't matter. And to them, I think to the oncologist, they're trying to just give them a free pass. Look, go and enjoy your life. You've got a terminal glioblastoma. It's not gonna be a problem. Giving them permission to go and enjoy themselves. But to the patient, every single time they said this, their head goes down. They said, yeah, I guess there's nothing I can do. And because they're actually asking, they're trying to be proactive in their treatment, thinking, what can I do? How can I help? Is there anything I can do? And they say, no, absolutely not. And it crushes their spirit. And I see it every time. And I always tell them, well, of course it makes a difference. Of course it matters what you do. I mean, even beyond all the principles that we spoke about today, just being healthier is going to help you weather the storm of chemo, radiation, and surgery. So just that alone, just being healthier generally is going to help you get through this. So, and obviously, I'm fully in agreement with all of you that this is something that's very significant and should be a significant part of cancer treatments as well. But at the very least, just understanding that just being healthy generally is going to improve your outcome and your treatment as well. So thank you very much for that. The one question from a practical standpoint, if someone doesn't have a clinician or a doctor that is supportive of this or wants to put them on a ketogenic diet, obviously you can't do the medications yourself. You should never take these sort of supplements or medications on your own without medical supervision. However, what about just the diet side of things? Is there any issue that you see with people just saying, okay, well, look, I'm just going to, and again, the oncologist said, doesn't matter what you eat or drink, okay, so why not be a ketogenic diet, right? And so is there any issue from anybody here's standpoint of someone just saying, oh, look, I'm going to enact a ketogenic diet myself to try to help my treatment?
I see one of the things about ketogenic metabolic therapy is that a significant burden of success will fall on the shoulders of the patient themselves. Every success, the greatest successes we've had is when the patient understands the concepts, what they need to do, and how to do it, and the family of the patient is understanding of that. Those are the people that we really see the best. So, and you'd be surprised how fast. I teach in undergraduates and graduate students in these biochemical things and all that stuff, and they struggle to learn this, and they don't, You get somebody with a glial, you'd be surprised how smart they get in such a short period of time. They're in those books, they know more than those kids do. They're out there learning, the kids are memorizing it to get into medical school, right? These people are looking at it to survive. There's a totally different view with the motivated person. You get a good, knowledgeable metabolic oncologist, a good dietitian, and a motivated patient, you're going to get tremendous success on these things. But unfortunately, we have all these discrepancies right now.
Okay. All right. So we're going to open up questions, and so we're going to go back and forth. So we're going to have to keep the questions very, very brief, and unfortunately, we don't have time to have a large setup for the questions. You have about 20 seconds to get your question out, and then there needs to be a question because we want to get to as many as we can. We already have a lineup. So we'll start over here.
I know somebody who's 61 years old and has had stage 4 cancer for 2 years. Is it too late to try it?
It's never too late to try. It's never too late to fight.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, they're still here, so there's obviously definitely worth trying, and so, the sooner the better, for sure. All right, we'll go to this side.
I'm going to try and get in 2 questions in 20 seconds, and the first one is, what about postmenopausal thyroid women, hypothyroid women? They find ketogenic diets quite difficult. Question number 1. Question number 2, fluconazole in GBM seems to shrink tumors, and I wondered if there was anything in the literature. And third point, linoleic acid, cardiolipin maintaining mitochondrial health. That's it.
Okay, so postmenopausal women and thyroid. I have met many postmenopausal women who are drinking kale, spinach, almond milk, and flaxseed shakes, which are really not good for your thyroid. Spinach and kale constantly advertised as the superfood. So this combination, there's been more damage, there's been more harm, so there's a lot more hard work involved. And it usually comes with hypochlorhydria, which is something that I haven't actually met someone with metabolic dysregulation that doesn't actually have a form of hypochlorhydria. That has to be addressed, in actual fact. I'll go to the linoleic acid and then I'll pass the mic over. The omega-6, you should actually have a good amount of it in your mitochondrial membrane, in actual fact. Where you don't see it in your red blood cells, because your mature red blood cells don't have mitochondria, it's not necessarily because we're not eating it. It's because we're using it up. The inflammatory state draws the omega-6 out of the membrane, turns it into prostaglandins to send these inflammatory signals. So we have to consider when we look at anything, it's not necessarily how much we're putting in as well, it's how much we're using out. So it's going to be a balance of that equation. So what we don't want to be doing is triggering the inflammation that is then removing that omega-6 from where it's supposed to be. And we're only supposed to use it for acute inflammation instances, which we would have evolutionary would have been experiencing it at times, but not chronically drawing it out. And when you chronically draw it out, hyperinsulinemia will do this. It will reduce the omega-6 that's in your mitochondria that then harms your cardiolipin.
Yeah, well, cardiolipin is, we're big fans of that because we isolated and purified cardiolipin. We characterized the entire mitochondrial, that cardiolipin profile in brain, in mouse brain, and then we did it in human brain, and we did it in cancer. It gets blown to hell in cancer. So, I mean, it's just unrecognizable any longer. And it has a pattern that you would see in a cell that would be fermenting. So clearly, we got to keep the cardiolipin as, it's the key. I don't have time to go into the evolutionary biology of cardiolipin, but it's unbelievable. If I can talk to you later about it, because there's a big story about that. We did a lot of it for years. It's not easy. We characterized the lipidome of mitochondria in brain and what happens to it in cancer. So it's just that I don't know how many people would really want to know about that at this time. Oh, you? Okay, well, I'll tell you all about it.
Okay, we'll go to this side.
Fluconazole, sorry.
Oh, does anybody have an opinion on fluconazole for treatment in cancer?
What, say again?
Fluconazole? Have you seen that?
Fluconazole. Yeah, I don't know anything about that.
Had a case of a lady on a ketogenic diet for 3-4 years, was doing well, but the tumor never shrunk. And then she had very high fungal markers. And fluconazole is the only azole that actually penetrates the blood-brain barrier really well. You can get really good levels of it in the brain. And that's when, after her 5th or 6th annual CT scan, for the first time, the tumor started shrinking.
Yeah, yeah.
So just, I wondered if there was anything in the literature.
I don't know, but you know, one of the things that we found that, do you know there's a huge effort to try to find drugs to penetrate the blood-brain barrier, right? Big field, right? We took small molecules for I worked on Tay-Sachs disease, lipid storage disease, and we found, and with brain cancer, when the animal is in, and I'm sure human as well, in therapeutic ketosis, small molecules are effectively delivered through the blood-brain barrier without toxicity. So why do we have to spend $1 billion to find a drug when a ketogenic diet or nutritional ketosis can penetrate, and different structures of small molecules? It's unbelievable. So I don't understand. Don't they read our paper? You can get all this stuff done far more efficiently with minimal cost. I don't know. I'm ready to give up on that.
Don't.
Yeah. Well, they have, that's what they're saying now too. People use antiparasitics, and it helps the cancer treatment. So they're saying cancer must be a parasite, even though we don't see parasites in cancer cells. We look at them under electron microscopes. I mean, that's not what we're seeing. But then the other one is.
There's one more. Yeah. You see parasites in cancer patients.
Yeah.
That's a different thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, but then the other one is cancers are fungal infections. So maybe that's what it is. You've just cured the fungal infection. That's not true, obviously, but it's no, but that's the rumor. A lot of these drugs that get repurposed and then have a benefit with cancer treatment, then people will say, well, this was normally a fungal treatment, so it must be a fungus. Cancer must be a fungus or a parasite or something like that. But yeah, obviously not. Okay, we'll go this side.
Hello, thank you. My name's Anita. I'm a GP that works with prostate and breast cancer patients. My question is, besides having a ketogenic diet, intermittent fasting, are there any other things in the diet or that they can do to optimize their health, whether it's specific food groups, specific kind of supplements that you would suggest or recommend?
I would say anything that keeps your GKI as low as possible. See what it does to the person's GKI. If it raises, don't do that.
So in the NHS, it's really difficult to measure the GKI unless you're academic or at a research center.
No, I think we have things. Keto Mojo is available. Mm-hmm. You know, everybody should have a Keto Mojo, right?
I've got one on my table if you want to see what one looks like.
Yeah,
that's good to know.
And get the Free Libra, right? The things you can wear on your arm. It should be the easiest thing to do.
we would love to think that, but really in practicality, it doesn't translate. In that I work in Southeast London, where it's quite a deprived area, and a lot of these things are not accessible, which is why I'm here trying to understand what is accessible to our patients and that are, aren't expensive and that they can do day to day. So that's why I'm here.
Yeah, well, I think...
I mean, definitely cancer patients will benefit from tailored, curated supplementation, likely. The problem is the quality of supplements are so bad. So you need a lot of help navigating which ones are safe to take that don't have fillers, binders, a whole load of rubbish, quite frankly, that has more rubbish stuff than good stuff inside. So you do need to have someone who's really good at navigating that for you to help you. A lot of biochemistry knowledge and that sort of thing. And then, yes, with nutrition advice, of course, as I said, the most nutrition-dense bioavailable. A lot of cancer patients, going through so much, and if you are doing treatment, you have nausea, you're not well. So I always say, if you've got 20 mouthfuls of food to take in that you can take in based on, you're tired, you're not hungry, you feel nauseous, any of these issues, you need every mouthful to count. So you don't want to be eating any foods that's subtracting things that are important for your body. Fiber, seed oils, they do that. You don't want things that have no nutrition, that are going to fill you up, but there's no nutrition inside of it. So it does really matter what you're eating. My team, we have Vanusa here, inside of our team, the names are inside of our publication. We have quite a few of nutritionists and biochemists that worked quite a lot. Nutritionists and dietetics that worked in our team. And they studied biochemistry. That's the difference. They didn't follow the tradition sort of standard nutrition education. They actually studied hardcore biochemistry. And I think that's really important. In any nutrition course and dietetics course, they have to be strong in biochemistry. So if you decide to go and do a course, if you want to go into this field, check out how good the biochemistry teaching is.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, the other thing is too is that if you're limiting the amount that you're eating, the timing you're doing it, calorie restricted ketogenic diets, or you're doing periods of fasting and refeeding, you can also think about nutrient density as well from a standpoint of organs. Organs are typically pretty cheap, and if you're eating less, you're going to get even more bioavailability with organs as well. You can go too far, get hypervitaminosis, especially in the fat-soluble vitamins like A. If you overdo it, but that's something that people can typically do at a very, and you don't. It's not. You're not worried about the what's contained in the supplement form. It's a natural bioavailable form that's not going to cause too much disruption as long as you're taking in appropriate amounts. So go to the side.
Hi, my name's Patrick Holford. I'm a nutritionist and a pagan. And in case you don't know what a pagan is, it's a pescatarian, egg-eating vegan with pagan tendencies. From the point of evolutionary biology, I cannot really understand why I, as an adult, would be breastfeeding from another species of animal and promoting all that IGF. And I cannot see any logical basis by which we became Homo sapiens without eating a very high marine food diet. So my questions are actually two. One is on methylation, homocysteine, B vitamins, B12. We know that folic acid could be a bit of a promoter of cancer cell growth, but methylation seems to be a major issue in so many cancers, and certainly the blood cancers. And the other is ascorbic acid, not just from the treatment, with intravenous, et cetera, but all animals make ascorbic acid. And, with the exception of primates, guinea pig, fruit-eating bats, et cetera. And it was Linus Pauling's sort of notice that animals that make vitamin C don't tend to get cancers, and we do. And it's very interesting, 1970s work on. So it's a kind of evolutionary biology question, but also a nutritional question. Methylation, homocysteine, B vitamins, and also vitamin C in the role of cancer.
I think that diet you're eating might have befuddled us all.
Well, I mean, as I said, testing your glucose and ketones will help you refine what works best for you in terms of your tolerances and things. And you're right about the vitamin C. You know, animals that produce their own vitamin C tend to be quite resistant against cancer. And that's why I do warn about reading studies with mice studies, because they make their own vitamin C. So that's a factor. So if we're doing mice studies and we're trying to look at how they, you know, that could reflect back to humans, maybe we need to, you know, horribly knock out their vitamin C production in that respect to improve those models. I would say that.
Well, I mean, as far as I can see, and I mean, leukemia is an absolute classic. You know, you just look at the literature, and there's so much evidence for raised homocysteine in numerous cancers. So my view is that is extremely unhealthy. So I would always want to check homocysteine, and I find it very, very high. A very simple model there is, you know, an older person might be B12 deficient as a function of probably poor acid production. Very simple. They could be doing everything right. You know, I don't have cancer patients, I'm in between it, but I work with people who have, you know, really good HbA1c, no insulin resistance, you know, eating loads of fruit and veg. And then we find super raised homocysteine, and it turns out to be just a function of B12, probably malabsorption. And
well, that loads of fruit and veg is what's causing the hypochlorhydria and the inability to absorb B12.
Well, yeah. But I'm a little bit dubious about that. But the point is, you know, if the literature is full of homocysteine associations, all I would wish is that it was something that would be checked. And then the other area, which I do understand because, you know, Tom and I have had various discussions, and you know, GKI, get it down below 2. But once, you know, cells are starved, you know, you mentioned, you know, hyperbaric oxygen therapy. If there were more time, I would ask what others are in your list. Personally, I like the idea of intravenous vitamin C. I mean, you know, we're searching for chemotherapy agents that don't harm healthy cells, a bit like, you know, keto therapy. And it looks like IV vitamin C, as a follow-on thing, is highly anti-cancer, but has no negative effects on healthy cells.
Yeah, I really agree with that. High dose, there's a lot of, they've actually published human trials on that in various cancers where they've done high dose, the dosages being sort of equivalent to 1 gram per kilogram of body weight, and the repetitions of either twice to 3 times a week. And the reasons for that are really interesting, but at the point of high dose, it's not an antioxidant. It's actually working as a pro-oxidant on the cancer cells, and it increases the hydrogen peroxide concentration around the cancer cells. And you know, if you're in therapeutic ketosis, they're less resistant to that. And so there's actually great trial publications on that.
All right. Thank you. We'll go to this side as well.
Can you tell us more about the way to enhance the mitochondria? You talked about the fasting. What about sun exposure, or red light therapy, melatonin, cold, hot, high intensity?
Anybody know alternative ways of improving mitochondrial function?
Look, there's a lot of stuff out there. You know, not just red light therapy, there's a lot. These things can improve mitochondrial function transiently and in a certain way. But I guess what I see is there's a lot of detailed thinking here in a lot of the questions. And it's coming from a reliance on, I guess, trying to find out what works. But the great thing about fasting and the ketogenic metabolic therapy is it's an umbrella term for so many different things happening. And I think you could look at red light therapy and other approaches and throwing in parasitic drugs and glutamine inhibitors and stuff. That should all be tested in proper clinical trials. But until we do that, it's all speculation. So I have no idea if that's going to help much. Sunlight obviously is a good thing. If I did a clinical trial in glioblastoma and gave this group a lot of sunlight and this not, would that cure them? Not a chance in hell. So we have to think about you know, I mean, I'd do the trial before I shouldn't say that without doing the trial, but, you know, if I'm doing red light therapy, this is a this is a terrible, terrible tumor, and I just can't see, like, the treatment has to be really powerful and well thought out in proper clinical trials. And honestly, the more I think I know, the more I do the work, the more I realize I'm so biased and I don't know that much, and I have to stay humble. So I'm not going to answer your question about red light, but I'm going to say I'm very skeptical that it would be a great game changer, and same with a lot of supplements and things like that in glioblastoma. Does that make sense? So it's a very harsh answer, but I really think we have to focus on big picture thinking, and fasting, keto diet, ketogenic metabolic therapy really is, to my mind, the main game changer in these things. And all the other stuff needs clinical trials, but I just can't see it being a big game changer.
Well, at least it won't harm.
No, but help in what way? I mean, when you speak to someone with a glioblastoma, they don't want to just get an extra month or two. I do this neuro-oncology meeting with the oncologists every damn week, and they all sit there and try and figure out, like, oh, you know, if we give a bit of extra radiation therapy or a bit of extra chemo, and they're trying to get an extra, you know, 2 or 3 months or something, that's a big win for them. But they're just stuck in this house where their options are limited. They got no windows. They can't see outside of it. And it's the same thing. Maybe it will help, but they don't. Glioblastoma patient wants a permanent, something long-term, and improve quality of life. So again, maybe it'll help a little bit. I can't see it helping a lot. And I'm all for it. I'm not against it, but I'm so neutral on most of these other things. You know, I think you got to really get at the heart of the condition, and try to apply something that's going to make a real powerful and effective long-term change.
So what? Sorry, for what I understand, you consider that fasting is above. I mean, like.
Yes, fasting.
Way
okay.
above in terms of stimulating the mitogenesis.
Yes. So keep in mind, I could be wrong. Right. However, fasting is going to induce that mito shift directly, and it's going to induce mito recovery more powerfully than anything. The keto diet will do both to a slower and more gradual extent. Sleep is very powerful for mito recovery. Very powerful. Mm-hmm. Induces the mito shift a little bit, okay, not much. Exercise will induce the mito shift a lot. And it's also very powerful, but you can take it too far. So you have to, I think the future of this is, if we're going to be relying on standard treatments, layering in each of these approaches, so particularly fasting, keto diet, sleep, exercise protocols in a very intelligent manner that maximizes mito shift and mito recovery till the cancer's gone, and then you work on the standard mitohormetic therapies. That would be my take. Now, sunlight's part of that, cold exposure, heat exposure, that can all help. Maybe red light therapy, all that can help, sure, but the main game has to be those things that are doing the most good.
Melatonin?
Medicine?
Melatonin?
Melatonin, sure, yeah, maybe, but I want to see clinical trials. I'm evidence-based. I'm skeptical. I see patients, they ask me about, not just GBM, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, all kinds of things. They ask me about 20 different things, and I'm like, you can try all that stuff. And then they come back and they're worse in a year. It's okay, I don't mind if you try it, but I don't want to give false hope. This stuff's not going to work unless I have the clinical trials showing it, and that's why I focus on the clinical trials so hard, which are really hard to do. If you don't work on those, we'll never advance the therapy. We'll never get it. We'll never get this ahead without proper clinical trials showing this stuff. And so we can try all this other stuff, and you'll know someone somewhere where it worked, or it seemed to work, right? So that's what I'm saying. You have to focus on getting good science out there and good evidence. And until then, all I can say to your question is, at the end of the day, I don't know. Yeah, go ahead.
I have to address those same types of questions in our preclinical systems. Oh, people say, try this. Will it work? Will it work? You give me $85,000 and I'll try it. Okay, and then I'll give you the evidence, and if it has a therapeutic benefit, and it's statistically, we have all the right control groups, then the clinicians go and say, maybe we can modify it. But it takes a lot of time and energy. These are not cheap experiments to run preclinical studies any more than it is to do a clinical study. These are very expensive studies.
If I may, Professor, you of all people are the right person to ask for that. I mean, in a crowdfunding movement, I'm sure that there's amount.
Are you kidding me? They don't crowdfund. How much money do you think you get from crowdfunding? It doesn't help me. I get it.
You should try.
We get it from private foundations predominantly, not people. So yeah, they what, 10, 15 bucks. To run these kinds of trials, you've got to have significant money. Philanthropy is the big thing. But are we going to take so much of our energy for a study that may have minimal impact? That's the key. Just like Matthew said, we want things that are going to be powerful. I'm not saying red light's not going to work, but I don't think it is. I would say let's focus on something else.
I think the question is, is red light going to work by itself, or is melatonin going to work by itself? So I think what we're really saying is the big hitter is bringing down the glucose, raising the ketones, bringing down the insulin. That's the big hitter. You don't want to be focusing on the 5–10% effects. You want to be focusing on the 90%. That needs to be, the public message to drive this forward. But it doesn't mean don't self-experiment, especially with things that are known to be quite safe, because you are your own experimenter and your own advocate. The reason why we've arrived now with more people accepting of ketogenic metabolic therapy is with patients actually experimenting on themselves. There wasn't, unfortunately, the clinical trial. And so, patients have to drive that. There was a study for infrared light therapy, 15 minutes of exposure, pre-given a glucose tolerance test. And on the participants, I don't remember all the details, but what I do remember was the postprandial glucose exposure was reduced by 27%. So that's really interesting, and it's not harmful to do it. So, be your own experimenter, right? Be your own scientist. With regards to melatonin, melatonin protects cardiolipin, right? We know cardiolipin is super, super important. The less cardiolipin you have, cancer cells have less cardiolipin, the less efficient your mitochondria are. So something that's protecting your mitochondria. But again, there's so much rubbish formulations out there. That's a real problem, With regards to sunlight, it's good for you. We've been told so often, don't go out in the sun, lather up on sunscreen. We make melanin for a reason, not as a natural sunblock. We absorb melanin. It's a DNA repair molecule. It's an antioxidant. Anthony and I were talking the other day, and he was saying there are melanocytes inside of your brain. Well, if it's only for your skin, what are they doing inside of your brain? Right? When you don't wear sunglasses or blue light blocking prescription glasses, the high noon sun, the UV light, actually sends a signal via your retinal cells that signals to your melanocytes to make melanin that you can absorb. And there are actually trials going on right now with melanin analogs, produced by pharmaceutical companies. So they tell us not to go in the sun, not to make any melanin, and here's the other one that we can make that we can sell you. And they've been showing to be really, really good to treat cancers without harming your healthy cells. We've got the sun, and let's not block it. Yeah.
All right, so we've got just under 10 minutes, so we're going to try to do rapid fire. So please ask your question as quickly as possible, and we'll try to give a quick response, and then we'll try to get through a few more of these.
Heather Rosa, Dean of the Institute for Optimum Nutrition, providing training in the third profession in the UK that deals with personalised nutrition, nutritional therapists. My question is predominantly to Matt. We're seeing the rise of fasting mimicking diets, and I wondered if you would comment on their potential efficacy.
Yeah, that's a lot of Walter Longo's work. Look, he's got the papers out there. There seems to be some efficacy, certainly in animal models. Again, it's kind of like you can do fasting many ways, and the fasting mimicking diet is one way to do it. And I think theoretically that seems to make sense to me and can work. I prefer the real deal, but I'm not going to say that's the only way. So yeah, if fasting mimicking diet is doable by a person in the long term, I would say go for it, because the data, from what I've seen, looks encouraging so far.
Well, the fasting mimicking diet was originally produced by Wilder from the Mayo Clinic. It was called the ketogenic diet.
Go to this side.
Hi, I'm Karen Benson. I'm a lifestyle GP in London. What about patients who've got genetic causes of cancer, like BRCA and other genes? Are you looking at promoting this way of eating and living to them, or have those studies been done yet?
Yeah, they have been, and we're starting that. We have a paper that's going to be submitted soon. We found that every one of the genetic risk factors that you inherit, not acquire, this is inherited risk factors, BRCA1, Li-Fraumeni, retinoblastoma, NF1, neurofibromatosis, a whole slug of these genetic risk factors. Every one of them, in one way or another, disrupts mitochondrial function, making those possibly modifiable by this kind of approach. We just don't have the data yet, but there is a couple of preclinical studies showing that it can work, but not in humans yet. But I've had several people email me who have family members that have these, and they're asking me. And the answer is we haven't tried it yet on people, but I think it's coming.
Can I ask one more thing? What about metformin? You haven't mentioned metformin at all.
Yeah, I know. We tried it one time because it's a glucose-lowering drug for people with diabetes, but it doesn't bring your sugar down to the levels that would be killing tumor cells. But it may have other effects on increasing oxidative stress. But when we put our mice on metformin and then calorie restricted them, and they got super sick from lactic acidosis. So I don't know what was going on with that. So I said, woo, you know, they're only trying to do things that work, right? But maybe it would work under a different context. I'm not sure.
Okay, I'll say it again. Pareto principle, have you heard of that? So in any system, 20% of the inputs gives you 80% of the outputs. So in that 20% for cancer, my perspective, I could be wrong. Fasting, keto diet, sleep, proper exercise regimen, that's it. All the other stuff, the metformin, the repurposed drugs, the supplementations, red light therapy, I consider all that stuff to be in the 80%. Not useless, but if you're gonna make real change, you want to find out the 20% that does 80% of the goodness. Does that make sense? So it's so important to get perspective here. I think a lot of these treatments can help as supplements and do a little bit of good, but you want to make a big change. I really think those are the things that we have to focus on.
Thank you.
All right, go to this side.
Hello, my name is Elle, and my question is mainly for Isabella regarding your research. Was there an increase of seed oil consumption in the suppression of ketosis phase?
That's a really great question, and the answer was absolutely not. So our participants were really aware already of seed oils and not wanting to consume them. So when they introduced the carbohydrates in the middle phase, the P2 phase, to suppress ketosis, they didn't actually increase seed oils. So, you know, there was some consumption of olive oil that was consistent throughout the whole trial. We've got really, really great data recording on this. But predominantly, the fats that were used was butter, ghee, coconut oil, things like that, animal fats, tallow, duck fat, these sort of things. And that didn't change through the trial. So, you know, this really, really shows you that those negative changes that we saw in those growth factors and inflammatory markers, that was due to consuming carbohydrates, not seed oils, right? And then took away the carbohydrate, they reverted back to a healthier profile. So this shows you a lot. I will also mention, with regards to type 1 diabetes, it's the insulin, which is the carbohydrates, that enables them to gain weight. That's something that should be really pointing out the driving of weight gain. Insulin is required. Now, can seed oils trigger insulin receptors? It can trigger some seed oils absolutely can. So you have to be really aware of that, hence why I mentioned about having less seed oils and plants. But in terms of the weight gain argument, type 1 diabetics need insulin. And if you're not type 1 diabetic, how do you trigger the insulin? Carbohydrates.
All right, so the last question will be to Dr. Westman.
Eric Westman, Duke University, North Carolina. I remember a lecture from an NIH professor who had a primate colony. They watched them till they aged, and one of them got fewer calories than the other, two different groups. And the underfed, the calorie-restricted primate colony had less heart disease, less cancer. So we're talking about the same process, perhaps. And when he was asked, well, why does this happen? He waved his arms up. There's an NIH, esteemed, he said, we don't know, maybe entropy. Everyone laughed. No, he may have been right. And that is just overuse. Entropy, it's not the age, it's the miles, that sort of thing. And then the other thing, I didn't hear any word of seed oils in the GKI. Do you care about the seed oils with the GKI? This is borrowing on yesterday's controversy.
Yeah, right. I'm not going to go down the seed oil path. All right, but I want to talk...
It's not part of the GKI calculation.
Listen, I think, Eric, the key thing here is entropy. Second law of thermodynamics.
Is it not?
It is, and ketones delay entropy. They make, because ultimately we die from reaching our mitochondria can no longer maintain energy balance, and we die. Now, unless they get run over or shot or something like this, is different. But for aging, we need to maintain the electrical gradient across membranes, which is energy driven. And if you can do that at a highly more efficient way, you're going to delay entropy, but never completely, but you're going to delay it. That's what we're looking at with the bioenergetic potential of a ketone body, which Bud Veach was the one to do that, and I put that out in several of our papers dealing with that. So I think the entropy issue is a central issue to what we're doing here for overall aging, which is another aspect of what we're talking about. But I think getting into the bioenergetics of that, which we are working on, but it's quite detailed. But the issue is very important, extremely important.
So in a metabolic program, I see people eating less and less. And if we had an iPhone or Android, I don't know, that could go a month without a battery recharge, this would be a huge thing, right? Do we have this wrong? Should we see how little we can consume as humans and survive instead of seeing how much we can eat? And my patients come in and saying, well, but I want this, I want that. Maybe we need to have a different idea. The fasting, I get so much pushback. Oh, you can't fast these people for more than, but no. So maybe the other way to flip it around is eat optimal nutrition and don't eat too much.
Yeah, well, that's
so
key.
Simple.
That's the key.
Oh.
But who wants to? People don't want to do that.
Well, I do.
We got the great unwashed. I mean, you go to a football game. What are you going to do? I mean, you're going to eat a big hot dog and all this stuff. But you're right. You're absolutely right about that. But it's human nature. We are tempted every day. We walk around. You know, how much discipline can you handle walking through? Where did we go the other day? What was the name of that market we went through? Yeah, that whatever that was. I mean, you were drawn into every mess of hamburger and whatever it is. You know, oh yeah. Oh, today I'm going to eat a piece of lettuce. You know, give me a break. You know, it's human nature. But you are correct.
coming back to when you just mentioned the seed oil aspect, because, you know, seed oils, rarely are people having seed oils freshly pressed, cold pressed, not exposed to the sun, all that sort of stuff. It's usually cooked with foods that we shouldn't be eating either, because it's palatability. And a lot of seed oils obviously have an increase in 4-hydroxynonenal, and I think it's 16-HOD. And these types of lipids actually harm your mitochondria a lot. So you have to always think about, are they harming my mitochondria? Is there any research on that? So that's just to think how much should you consume of that, you know. And then, as I said earlier on, I think about seed oils, the fact that they do prevent bile reabsorption. So at its most basic level, it's going to cause nutrient deficiency by preventing you absorbing those fat-soluble vitamins and taurine and omega-6 and omega-3. So I'm not, you know, in favor of seed oils for that. Additionally to the fact that seed oils quite often are really rich in phytoestrogens, and also a number of them are actually rich in lectins that can actually also stimulate certain insulin receptors, not glucose uptake receptors, but the actual PI3K MAP kinase, which is the growth and division pathways. I caveat all of that on the top of the fact that usually they are eaten with carbohydrates, so now you've got a double whammy. And in terms of the fasting aspect, when you go to a very nutrient-dense, bioavailable diet, the fasting gets easy. You're just not hungry. You know? So the control doesn't need to be there as much, actually. And when you're facing cancer, you do the right diet, you're not hungry, and you're motivated. So...
All right, well, unfortunately, we can't get to all the...
Just the last question,
Oh.
very quick one. And it's
I think they got it, yeah. Yeah, but everyone will be available after the fact, so very sorry about that. Thank you all very much for that, and thank you for the panel. Really appreciate it.